First up tonight, we have a 10-year-old young man who has appeared now in a number of motion pictures, who received a nomination for an Academy Award for The Champ a number of years ago. Mr. Ricky Schroder is here tonight. Second, we have Mr. Iggy Pop, a young man who used to, now get a load of this, he used to claw himself so severely during his rock performances that his skin would begin to bleed on stage. And I heard, see, we know why they're here tonight, don't we? And one time, I'm told that he actually threw up on the audience. So the people in the first three rows here tonight, bad trouble, okay?
Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike. I'm here with Rick, and we have fired up our podtinis and are ready to do another listener request. This one is from our friend Dan, also a friend of the show, Dan, and I just want to do a quick promo for a project he did that actually I helped him with. I engineered it, so if you like the engineering of this podcast, you might like this. Or if you like Nirvana or surf music, he did a CD of surf instrumental covers of Nirvana songs called Surfana Whatever. And you can find out more about that at facebook.com/surfanaband or Django, that's GANGO.com/music/surfana. And we'll put those up on the show notes too. And this is actually partially a musical themed episode too.
Yeah, and let me just say real quick, even if you don't like the engineering of this podcast or surfing or Nirvana, give it a shot because it's a incredible achievement, and Mike might not want to say that himself, but he was a part of it. But it was a brilliant concept by Dan, and the two of you executed it very well, and it's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. So give it a shot. And I'm not just saying that because he's a friend of the show,
right?
And because you're on the show,
right? Okay, so we're going to be talking about an episode of The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, which aired on NBC for a number of years in the slot after The Tonight Show, and then was replaced by Late Night with David Letterman. So a talk show, a little bit of a different talk show, I think. Mm-hmm. And this episode comes from a DVD set of new wave and punk themed episodes. Dan had that and thought this one, the one we're going to do in particular, had a lot of, to quote him, gold in it. So, yeah, what more should we say about Tomorrow Show in general? Maybe Tom Snyder.
Well, it's interesting. You had the old NBC gimmick. You had the Today Show, Tonight Show, and then Tomorrow. Afterwards, and it's pretty amazing to watch this now. Like you said, it's a little bit different. These shows were from a different era of the Tomorrow Show. Tom Snyder started out as a newsman. He was like a legit news guy, and I think he went back into being a news anchor after his stint with the Tomorrow Show on NBC. He was a very engaging television personality. He was a good conversationalist, kind of that old school interviewer that could just engage with people and have conversations as opposed to just having people on to plug their stuff.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated by him. I will say about Tom Snyder, the thing that stands out to me, like growing up, I was aware of Tom Snyder because of Dan Aykroyd's impersonation of him on Saturday Night Live. He had his hallmarks like the big chortle and the constant cigarette smoking.
Right.
Is kind of the thing stood out. And usually it was in a dark set, just two people like talking back one another and the camera crew and, some stagehands and everything like that. And so it was kind of an intimate setting. This era of the show was sort of like they had a studio. They brought like an audience and tried to glitz it up a little bit. And to me, it kind of takes away from it. But
yeah.
We'll get to that. But I want to mention what really stood out to me about Tom Snyder is it wasn't until like the 90s when I actually started watching Tom Snyder. And he had his show on CNBC, like a similar show to what he was doing on NBC. I guess like shorter, less profile, understandably. Mm-hmm. And then amazingly, David Letterman moves from NBC to CBS,
Wow.
the whole late night wars thing. You've got all these big names floating around, like who's going to replace Dave? Who's going to step into Johnny's role? So you got Jay Leno and all sorts of guests going around. Dana Carvey, Gary Shandling's involved in the mix. Well, David Letterman has creative control with his production company over what follows him on CBS, and he amazingly chooses Tom Snyder.
Yeah, and
even more amazing than the Tomorrow Show, watching it now, is thinking back at how he actually got, the Late Show, that David Letterman gave that shot to Tom Snyder.
Yeah.
Not so amazing because Dave just does what he wants, and he liked Tom Snyder. He grew up,
And I'm sure he must have felt bad about...
Right.
Or had mixed feelings about replacing him.
Right. He had loyalty to his friends, and he wanted to put people on that he thought were good at what they did. And Tom Snyder is very good at what he did.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me to think about Tom Snyder at 12:30, and on the other network you had Conan O'Brien doing an entirely different kind of show.
Yeah.
And even back then, I think it was what Tom Snyder was doing, that this brand of like one-on-one conversation was kind of declining a little bit. I mean, you had like Bob Costas doing later on NBC after late night, which is kind of like the sort of an equivalent, but that was at 1:30 and this was at 12:30, and it just seems weird that this show lasted as long as it did on CBS.
Like Charlie Rose is
right,
but that's nothing against PBS, but a step down in terms of late night.
Right, it's not ratings driven. It's not. It's aimed at more well-to-do audience and things like that, and not the same kind of demographics.
And CNBC, as you mentioned, had a bunch of stuff like this at the time. And in fact, another fascinating personality replaced him, Charles Grodin.
Yeah.
And he had his own weird version of that.
Yeah. And CNBC had this period where after the business news for the day, they would have, Dick Cavett and people like that doing these conversationalists, sort of that old school talk show mentality, having interesting people on their show. I remember in college, one of my roommates and I, we'd have like a big running joke where it's probably not going to sound that funny now. But one of the things that's most distinctive about the show was that David Sanborn, I think, did the theme music, which I've had in my head ever since watching this version of the Tomorrow Show. Mm-hmm. But I had in my head the 90s late night with Tom Snyder. It was a very like kind of little jazzy theme song, and just the idea of Tom Snyder being on and like people like watching it and asking you to fire up a simultane.
Right.
I think it was a color teeny on at first, and then simultane because it was on the radio, which was ridiculous. But
that was an interesting thing that the CBS show was simulcast on radio in like other time zones other than Eastern, so that people could call in.
Right, and that like Tom Snyder was the kind of guy that loved that sort of thing, and the concept of being on radio as well, because he was like an old school broadcaster. Yeah, he wasn't just like that. That's really what you call him, like a broadcaster. He was not just a talk show host, but he was kind of like that sort of broad. He had an idiosyncratic appeal, but he loved the idea of being on radio and everything like that. But so I just thought it was funny to make a big deal out of Tom Snyder being on. So every now and then we'd do something where we'd sort of open our door and just sort of blare that music and have, just somebody come running down like to the, we'd be down, brushing your teeth in the men's room or doing something in the communal bathroom. Rick, Tom Snyder's on, and so just come, running back down the hallway and just kind of make a big deal out of it. But for many people, it probably was a big deal. And actually, I do remember sitting and watching, the monologue, because Tom Snyder would just like sit and talk. And
right.
In contrast to this, like the hallmark to me was him having these little private in jokes with the cameraman and off screen, and just sort of the fact that it's just him and the crew, it makes it made the whole thing a little bit funnier to me, and I sort of like that appeal of it. So in the 1990s, it seemed like he was a fish out of water even at that time, but I sort of enjoyed that sort of thing. So I really enjoy watching this episode we're going to talk about, but it's from an era in the Tomorrow Show where it wasn't necessarily like classic Tom Snyder, that format, because the audience just leads some other dynamic to it, because he and the guests are sort of playing to the crowd a little bit more, and I don't quite like it as much.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of him until like the CNBC. I think I had seen probably some of those SNL sketches, but I didn't know what they were about. And I probably still enjoyed it because it was,
Right. There's something funny about it, even if you don't know this.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, it's a talk show with a weird host.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing it was based on a real guy. I did see someone, like, maybe Dana Carvey recently, somebody talking about, like, the difference between, like, the Dan Aykroyd's impression was not accurate, but it was accurate in tone or something.
Right, like, technically...
Whereas Harry Shearer had, like, a perfect technical version.
That's an excellent comparison. I think you could say that probably about a lot of Dan Aykroyd's impersonations.
Yeah.
They weren't, like, technically, he wasn't like, Rich Little or something like that.
Right.
Depending on how you think about Rich Little. But
yeah.
But he got the essence of it and sort of got that something that was instantly recognizable and became iconic.
Yeah. But I did watch, I don't know how much I watched the CNBC, but I definitely watched The Late Late Show quite a bit, I remember, and enjoying that. But the same thing, it's like kind of old at that point. It was like in his 60s, right? Or maybe even 50.
Yeah.
He's like in his mid-40s on the episode we watched.
Yeah.
So, he's probably like in his late 50s. It turns out had the exact same haircut he had in 1981.
Looks much the same.
He's just white, and he's just, talk all these stories about mother and her vodka and the whole color and simultini stuff, and he would just have people on like Harlan Ellison and just kind of odd guests, and but was really good at talking to them, and he's both the laugh and the being kind of brusque and everything, but he's also like a pretty good listener and seems kind of like to have a sensitivity about him, and he gets very serious sometimes in his questions. And so yeah, I liked him, and I know Letterman's whole thing about broadcasters and liking him because he was a broadcaster, and you can see that he's not a comedian. But he's a funny person. Right.
He's very quick-witted.
Yeah.
He's sharp. I totally agree with you. He's an excellent interviewer. Yeah, I think he's great, and I think in this collection of episodes, in this episode in particular, you see that he looks totally out of place talking to some of these musicians, but he's not like doing a Steve Allen and mocking them.
Mm-mm.
I mean, he's trying to understand them, I think, and genuinely trying to give them a platform. And I think he's somebody that wants to give the guests a chance to interact with them. And we'll talk about it when we talk about these guests in the show, but he's working with them. I'm sure, I mean, you look at him, you get the sense that, he probably had like a massive ego.
Yeah.
But not in a necessarily bad way.
Right.
But he wants the show, he knows the show is good if it's a conversation, and he's facilitating the conversation. I think he's excellent at what he does, and I thoroughly enjoyed kind of going back and watching some of him, old Tom Snyder in action.
Yeah. And I don't think he was happy about the audience thing.
Yeah.
And I somehow Rona Barrett was involved in some of those episodes too. It was like a co-host or...
Yeah, they had her doing segments
remotes or something.
Back when Rona Barrett, who we've mentioned on a previous episode.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And unfortunately, she seems to be missing in action in this episode, and I'm not sure what the deal is.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. One of the other episodes is like 31 minutes, so now they're showing musical performances, but it doesn't seem like the episodes are complete, so I don't understand what the deal is. And maybe some of the episodes were, I don't know, maybe they started later.
Right.
Who knows? But Rona Barrett is not in the episode we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
You're okay with that.
It's a pretty jam-packed episode.
It is.
Even if we're not even getting all of it at 41 minutes and 3 musical performances and 4 guests.
Yeah, right, because he has a little interview with the musical performer. So yeah, it's something else.
Yeah. Also, I like that branding, that tonight, tomorrow branding. I think that's pretty neat. I understand the value of the late night and later brand, but it would be kind of cool if they went back to that.
Yeah, at least add something onto it. Maybe do a 2 o'clock or 2:30 show and call it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right. They're extending the Today Show in the other direction. Just keep extending it.
Yeah.
Maybe they do. Maybe they call like the super early morning overnight news that or something.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
it's simple, and they all start with the same letter.
Yeah. Late night has changed a lot, though.
Yeah.
Even in the last 5 years since David Letterman's gone, and
but it's interesting, in the world of podcasting, a lot of the popular podcasts are these conversational ones, like Marin and Gilbert Gottfried to an extent.
Where it's sort of stripped down.
Yeah,
you have one-on-one conversations with some people in the periphery is essentially the audience.
Yeah,
and
And of course, NPR does that with some shows, but
I will say, I think you either get Tom Snyder or you don't, and I can see people not liking it. And it does seem like part of it seems absurd because it seems like he's laughing at his own jokes sometimes, and it seems like they're just running along this private inside joke kind of thing for themselves. And
right.
That appeals to me. I kind of like that, but I can see how it would turn off some people. But I enjoy it. And there's a little bit of that on this. I mean, it's not totally lost. The effect isn't totally lost. It's just a little bit different with a studio audience.
Yeah. I didn't realize that when I was watching it. I didn't realize that the audience was not normal.
Yeah. So
I mean, for the musical part, the audience is a good thing. I think it adds to that, and that there are people there clearly for that guest and stuff. And I think that the audience is a mixed bag with it. But
yeah. So I mean, growing up, I remember watching Johnny Carson, Letterman, but as far as like staying up and watching Tom Snyder, no, I didn't do that.
Well, it went off the air in '82, so I can't imagine either of us would have been old enough to stay up and watch that.
Well, I watched a lot of TV. I mean, here's the thing, though. Tom Snyder would have been on, 12:30 or 1. I probably was watching Star Trek on and Twilight Zone on WPIX at that age. So
okay. At that time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it was on, Star Trek was on at midnight, Twilight, after the Honeymooners, man. Honeymooners was 11:30, then Star Trek. So, might see who Carson was on, but with my little, tiny black and white TV... I'm watching Honeymooner, Odd Couple, Honeymooners, Star Trek, and Twilight Zone.
And then you were sleeping through the first half of school?
Well, this would be during the summer.
Oh, the summer. Yeah. Okay.
Not necessarily every night, It would be.
Right.
So, okay. So this was something. Yeah, we both discovered Tom Snyder after his prime. I guess his sort of second run, but he had a pretty prominent run in there. But it stood out even then, and I imagine CBS was just totally probably would not have preferred Tom Snyder to follow up Letterman.
Right.
But at this time, in 1982 or 1981, 1982 and before, there wasn't a whole lot else going on. So NBC probably made a pretty healthy profit on this show because, people were probably watching the late local movie or something like that. And there wasn't a multitude of options this late at night.
Do we want to say who all the guests are the way Tom did, or go just introduce them one by one?
Well, I don't know if I can do it the way Tom did. I don't have a cigarette in my hand. And we could go ahead and give people a little preview of what's coming up. It was February 12th, 1981 was when this aired, by the way.
Got at least one returning customer to the show.
Yes. The Ricker,
Ricky Schroder. Mm-hmm. A mere year before Silver Spoons. And musical guest is Iggy Pop. Mm-hmm. And the other guests are Jerome Smith, who I guess is an economist.
Yeah. It doesn't say much for him that after that segment, I still don't know exactly who he is or what he does.
And there seems to be zero information about him on the internet. And Dorothy Greene-Pepper, a poet of sorts.
Yeah, it seems like a poet, a gadfly,
yes. Southern Belle.
Some kind of character. Yes. She's the final guest.
Yeah.
And then they bring out Iggy to close it. So there's three musical numbers, I believe.
Yeah, the last one's during the credits.
Yes.
But two definitely full ones.
Yeah, and Iggy also sits down to talk with Tom. In between sets, I guess. So. Yeah. So like you said, it's a packed show and it's 41 minutes on this set. So had a lot going on. Unfortunately,
no rambling monologue.
No, that's like I said, I enjoyed that from Tom, but got right to it on this one, I guess.
Right, and no teenies at this time in his career.
Right.
Maybe some martinis, but
yeah, most likely.
And certainly a lot of cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he's not got a cigarette, he's got his lighter in his hand.
Yeah, just in case he needs to light up and have another cigarette.
Yeah, and so the set is like two big leather chairs. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And the musical act performs. It's basically the backstage so if you're familiar with Letterman, because it's the same studio, where Letterman would come out, the same doors open up and he would come out. And I guess kind of the same area musical acts would play, although I don't think they were backstage that way.
Yeah, it must have been shifted over. Yeah, but you're right, yeah.
I think that's one of the things Dan mentioned is kind of fun to see. These things you're familiar with.
Yeah, like in a different context, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, Ricky Schroder is the first guest. It's not a polished segment at all, but I found it very entertaining.
I did as well.
He's very much a kid.
Okay, so let's talk about this. I really enjoyed this segment. He seems to have a pretty good rapport. I found Rick with Tom Snyder, but I found him like an odd mix of humble and like totally artificial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, he's saying all the right things, but something seems like not really scripted, but there's something that seems like a little put on about him. Like he's doing
a character.
Yeah, like he's playing. He's doing it. There's something just doesn't seem quite genuine about it.
Okay. I mean, he's definitely precocious.
He's precocious, but I mean,
and he's doing like some of the stuff that I enjoyed was just that he's the unpolished parts where he's like squirming and he's taking candy out of his pockets and
that's yeah.
And I don't that doesn't seem like a put on to me.
Well, he says something like about what they tell me, and Tom Snyder at one point says, "Yeah, you don't seem like you entirely believe that."
Yeah,
and he kind of acknowledges it. It's like he's saying the right things,
right?
But he doesn't necessarily believe them. I think we're both maybe seeing the same thing.
Okay,
like some of the more polished sounding stuff, and like maybe not platitudes, but some of the stuff he's saying about show business and stuff.
Yeah,
it seems like he says it well. It's good that he says it, but you don't necessarily see that he believes it because he is so But
like somebody told him, so like maybe there was a pre-interview and.
Or maybe his handlers or his parents or whoever are coaching him up or something like that and telling him to say a certain way. Okay. But you can see, though, he also can't resist. I mean, he addresses the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, he wants to interact. And he's sort of like, it's just odd to me. Like, he's not necessarily giving Tom Snyder full attention, but he's not being rude either.
Yeah. It could just be he's a kid and he's distracted.
Well, that's true. I mean, He's not Iggy Pop. I mean,
no.
I don't know how.
Who is also very distracted.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's
young. He's promoting a movie. I can't remember what movie he's promoting.
I don't either.
I didn't.
Because they already talked about, like, the movies they talk about are ones that had already come out.
Yeah, I didn't recognize the movie.
That was a Snyder thing I enjoyed in the introduction. His very serious introduction, and just the way he read a line, like like there's some science fiction movie, right? And it's like with an actor named William Holden. Like it's just some actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I imagine it was meant to be understated and sold at the same way.
Maybe this
an actor named, William Holden, but he just reads it completely straight, like he's reading the news.
I guess there's a little bit of artifice in Tom Snyder, too.
Sure.
I shouldn't be holding this against Ricky Schroder.
Yeah. Like an audience member asked him about acting with William Holden. He seemed to give an okay answer. He didn't, not very specific answer, just that they got along and they were buddies. And
yeah.
William Holden wanted to adopt him, like in a grandfatherly way, not as his kid.
Yeah, it's interesting that they throw to the audience for questions. That's another thing, because Tom Snyder says, "Oh, the audience has some questions in case I didn't think of something," and it just seems ridiculous because it seems a little contrived. It's not a long segment anyway.
Yeah,
you think of Krusty the Clown like, "Oh, this is always talk to the audience. Oh, this is always dead." But it wasn't too bad. And like young guy gets up and Tom Snyder busts on him for chewing bubble gum.
Right? Yeah.
While he's asking the question, like, yeah, why not?
And then somebody asked him, just misphrase it, but asked Ricky Schroder, because Ricky explains that he tells a story about like when he went to his new school and he met these three girls and two of them were fine and one of them was like, just didn't like him at all. And then the next day when she found out who he was sucking up to him, and the other girls were exactly the same. So he can tell who his real friends are.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked a question, well, what about your boyfriends?
Yeah.
And he's still got, his accent is really thick. His New York, like Brooklyn accent is still pretty thick. But
yeah, that's interesting.
What are you saying about, I can't do it, but what are you saying about
me?
And then Tom Snyder said, just in the middle of that, I guess he was just saying, how people look. He's like, they don't think that you're a swell, do they? or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
like I had to look that up. I'm like, oh, that just means they don't think he thinks he's better than anybody.
Yeah.
But I thought it was still connected to the
Right. I mean,
the Ricky thinking they were saying he was
Tom Snyder
like
should have
boys.
said, friends that are boys,
Yes.
Ricky, not boyfriends.
Right.
All right, go on. But yeah, it's 1981 and he's a kid, so it's remarkably restrained that he answered the way he did, actually. He just certainly does have a certain composure, but
Yeah.
yeah. But he's very engaging.
He is, yeah.
You wouldn't think watching him, and he didn't really, right? But you wouldn't think, okay, he's going to be one of the kids that's going to grow up and have
a messed
terrible
up
problems.
life. Yeah.
I mean, I guess he had a good background and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good. It's a good segment. I enjoyed the two of them, and I think Tom Snyder's. He has some good. It seems like he's trying to. I think he does this with everybody, but he tries to make him comfortable, and he's sort of asking questions. He's not condescending to the kid.
Right.
I think he's treating him as an equal, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem unhappy about it. So.
Yeah.
Good for both of them in that segment, I would say.
Yeah. And then we immediately get an Iggy Pop song.
Of course.
Of course.
Ricky Schroder plugging his movie, and also another thing too. I think in this segment more than any others, there was some like extreme close-ups.
Yeah.
Like there was a little bizarre, something you're not used to seeing nowadays.
Yeah.
Just like really like just Ricky Schroder's head filling the whole screen. It seems especially inappropriate for like a young kid.
Right.
But I guess that was the style.
Yeah. Yeah, those cameramen seem to have they weren't just because in the musical segment they're doing stuff too. They're almost like 60s style stuff, like jittering the camera.
Yeah.
And like I think one of the songs had like not quite slow motion, but sort of slowed down video, and where I thought the DVD was messed up.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yeah, they were an active part of the show. I mean, there's like actual production going on here.
Right, yeah.
We were talking about sort of like the minimalist. I don't know. Maybe that was more true of these coast to coast era, not so much the early days. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot going on with these cameramen.
Yeah.
Hopefully they were instructed to do it and weren't just doing it on their own. But.
Right. Snyder introduces him and mentions that he'd been known to like cut himself on stage and had vomited on an audience once.
Yeah.
Kind of as a warning, but some people cheer, and he's like, "Oh, we know who they're here for," and they come out and do the song, and it's a fun. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot
dog
of
food.
Dog food. That's right.
Yeah, this is Iggy. Like I guess after the Stooges.
Yeah.
He's known for the Stooges. They're a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame act, a seminal act. Would it be fair to say? Mm-hmm. Seminal proto-punk.
Yeah.
Hard rock kind of thing. And I'm not a Stooges guy. I'm not an Iggy Pop guy necessarily. No. And like a lot of the musicians, I was not a big punk guy. I was too young for it probably.
Yeah.
Never really got into it afterwards. But I'll say that this and like the other numbers, they definitely have a lot of energy, and you can definitely see the appeal of like Iggy Pop and
yeah. He's clearly an entertainer.
Yeah, and they rock. I mean, they're not.
Yeah. Tom calls it new wave, which it's not really.
Yeah, I don't think.
I mean, it still seems more in the punk mode.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess that name had already gone away.
Yeah, even if you didn't have a guy bleeding and.
Yeah, but he does. He hits his head against the microphone stand, or his face, and his nose is bleeding.
Yeah, so he's got to sit down and talk to Tom with his.
Well, he said he didn't want to damage the microphone.
It's very respectful of him.
Yeah. And the interview is really pretty interesting because most talk shows, the musical acts don't get interviewed, or there's a commercial break or something, and maybe there was a commercial break, but he's like wired for about half of it still from the song.
Yeah,
and he even says that the adrenaline makes it hard for him to, just come and then talk to someone in a normal way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there's blood on his lip, and Tom asks him like about, how do you hear when it's so loud, and he has to explain monitors.
Yeah.
Like, we have these little speakers that you provided that.
Yeah. Yeah, like you paid for them.
Right.
So no, wait a minute now. Yeah, it's a nice interaction. I think to me, that was kind of an example of maybe like, instead of like, sort of trying to make him feel more at home, maybe by asking him like a musical question and showing respect as a musician, as opposed to going right in like, hey, what's this deal with cutting yourself on stage? Which I thought was an interesting thing, and maybe try to get him to ease him into. Yeah, I could be wrong. Maybe he was just genuinely really interested about that, but it was
really both.
Yeah, and it was sort of the kind of thing like, well, an older guy that's not necessarily hip to this music might ask that sort of question, but it is kind of an interesting question, actually.
Because he's probably sitting there in his chair smoking, like, oh, this is so loud.
Yeah. How does he hear this?
So, and like, Iggy's all like slouching in his chair with his leg over his armrest, and so Tom does that too, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
And then, kind of once he calms down a little bit, he gives pretty thoughtful answers.
He does, yeah. He's a pretty good guest.
Yeah, and he goes on to say about the difference between Dionysic, which I don't think is a word, but an Apollonian art, and how what he does is Dionysic. And, and Tom's like, yeah, I'm not really up on that. Or something.
You try that stuff with Cavett. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's a pretty good interview, and like that's a place where he's like you said, he's not making fun of him or anything, but he. Like a couple of times he like you can see like he's playing devil's advocate and saying, you can see that this might scare some people or something. It's intense, and he's like, yeah, but it's all fun.
Yeah, I think he's given him a forum to like explain himself. And kind of make a connection and without really trying to ingratiate himself like to that audience.
Right.
He's not pretending that he's like really into it, but he does seem Snyder does seem kind of out of place there.
Yeah.
But it works, I think. It's I would have liked to have seen more of the interview between them. I don't know how long Iggy would have continued to give thoughtful, interesting answers, but
we might have gotten more thoughtful.
Could be.
We should say too that for 2 of the 3 songs, he has a shirt on.
He does, yes.
Yeah.
Much to the chagrin of some people in the audience, apparently.
Yeah.
And Tom Snyder keeps his shirt on the whole show.
Right. Yeah. Pants, different story. But no.
Yeah.
And I think after the interview, they go to the next song, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my notes here. They play 5'1". And I have a comment that that Iggy Tom Snyder asked him about something being intrusive, and Iggy said, "Well, it's only intrusive to squares." So, to squares, like
right.
really, there's even then in 1981, there was the dichotomy of squares and hip. So,
of course,
was that the language of punk?
It might have been. Well, he gets asked his influences, and they're all like old school jazz, like Hoagie Carmichael and stuff.
That's a good point. Yes. So it's a polite way of saying it, I guess. But there's worse things he could say on network television. But it's not like he's being snotty or anything.
Right.
But it stood out to me as an interesting thing. But
there is a point too where he clearly wants to swear, and Tom like offers him alternatives.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what.
No, but I imagine Tom Snyder knew a few choice words of his own.
Yeah.
Off camera.
He clearly knew what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
Was able to reinterpret it into broadcast acceptable language.
That's a good way to put it, yes. So they do 5'1", and that's
yeah, that was fun too, because it's about a guy who's 5'1", and a lot of the time, like Iggy's like crouching and stuff, like he's 5'1", and
I mean, it's another like really dynamic performance.
Yeah, and the dog food one, I mean, it's just silly because he's singing about being so poor that he's eating dog food or something, right? Yeah, that's fun. And speaking of fun,
we're talking about our next guest,
Jerome Smith,
Mr. Personality. This guy is electric.
Yeah.
So he's talking about the coming currency collapse.
Right. This is in 1981.
Yeah.
So, what is it? Well, it was September?
This is February 1981.
So just
right
into
after
the Reagan.
The incoming Reagan administration.
Post-Carter, there had been an inflation crisis during
the
Carter years.
Inflation and Reaganomics is coming up, and
I mean, it was hard to follow, but it was a time capsule for sure.
It was. I mean, the guy even sort of looked like a 1981 economist.
Yeah,
economist.
Sort of like if Gene Shalit were an economist, right?
Yeah. No, that's apt. Yes. How do we know that Gene Shalit didn't just stick around all day after the Today Show and, hey, we need an economist for our show. Gene, can you play him?
I'd like to see Gene Shalit just doing economist, like 2 minutes on the economy.
Procter & Gamble shares are way down.
I say, hold on to them. They'll go back up.
You're really going to love...
I was at my accountant's yesterday. And
Yes, Gene Shalit, another relic of this era of NBC. If only. I think we can say if only. I think Tom Snyder even... at one point, I mean, he sort of implores him to get to the point. If I'm not mistaken. He's trying to get him to kind of get his concepts out, but I think the guy's going on a little bit. And
yeah, he's definitely his concept, if I understand it, is basically a doomsday scenario.
Yes.
Whereas inflation gets so out of control that currency loses all its value.
Right, and it's like in other countries, I think, Tom, where it's practically worthless. You know, the currency's worthless.
Right.
Could this happen to the dollar?
Yeah. And he has a solution, which, if I understood that correctly, sounds like it might be good for people who do it, but maybe not good for the economy.
Well,
which is get all your money out of the banks and stock market and convert it to silver.
Yeah, well,
or gold.
He's not the first guy and not the last guy to say something like that.
Yeah.
And this is not an economics podcast. I can't comment on how valid his ideas are.
Yeah.
Mainly because I don't understand what they are. But
right. He did praise Reagan's, I'm guessing, State of the Union address, and or whatever they call the first one. The first one's not called the address to Congress.
Yeah.
Which I assume was him outlining the Reaganomics. Mm-hmm. He seemed to think that was going in the right direction, but not far enough.
Yeah. Well, I think they had some like really tough times. Before the economy would like rebound like a little bit later, but with Reagan, first couple years of Reagan, it wasn't so great.
No, that's true.
Then it became Morning in America.
That's right.
And everything was good again. Let's everybody remember those days. So we did not have a cataclysmic currency crisis, as Jerome Smith feared.
Yeah, which may be why he's lost to the sands of time a little bit.
You think Jerome Smith was like rooting for this currency crisis so that he'd look good?
He probably had hoarded a bunch of silver, and yes, he was. He was going to be the king.
Yeah, he became like Buddy Ebsen in the Wizard. He was like poisoned by all the silver he was with, and his skin changed, and he had to stop making TV appearances.
Yeah,
because of that silver poisoning. Mm-hmm. His skin turned, color. And,
right. Yeah.
And probably he had lung cancer from just this segment with Tom Snyder alone. So it's no wonder we don't know more of Jerome Smith now that I think about it.
Yeah. I do think his book might be available in Google Books.
You think? Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we'll have to check it out.
That's about all I could find when I searched him.
Do you think you might do a review of that book for our website?
No.
Oh, okay. Just worth a shot.
Certainly not a legitimate review.
Yeah, well, there were many segments on the show, and this was one of them.
Yeah.
I think we can agree on that. He probably had some interesting conversations backstage with Iggy Pop and Ricky Schroder.
Ricky Schroder's known for hoarding his silver.
Yeah.
That's why after the show, because Tom asked him, about the whole, does he get an allowance or what? And he had something about like, well, if there's a toy I want and it's a good quality toy, they'll give me some of my money to buy that toy, but they won't let me buy a cheap toy.
Yeah, I would like to have heard some more specifics on that, actually.
Yeah, because he was saying plastic, but like every toy is plastic. I mean, then there was still some metal, like Tonka trucks or something.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
A bike.
Maybe,
but
maybe hopefully he was able to get like a Matchbox car every now and then.
Yeah.
Hot Wheels. I mean, those were cheap.
Those are metal.
Tightwad parents could have given him some of that stuff.
No Star Wars toys for him, though.
Ugh, what a shame.
Only the die-cast.
Yeah. It's a wonder he didn't turn out bad.
I
If
know.
he was deprived of, like, the cool toys that we had.
Yeah.
And look how we turned out.
Fully functioning adults.
Fully functioning adults sitting around making fun of a prominent economist because we can't understand what he was talking about.
Was he a prominent
Even
economist,
with decades
though?
of hindsight, we still don't know what's going on with him.
Was he a prominent economist or a prominent crackpot?
He was all that and more, I think. Well, he was an expert.
I imagine he also maybe appeared on like William F. Buckley's show, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so tell me about William F. Buckley, I'm sure, understood.
Yeah.
William F. Buckley understood Jerome Smith's positions better than Jerome Smith did, probably.
Yes, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's one more guest.
Oh, boy, is there ever. Now, she could have gotten her own show, and I think she was trying for it, actually. But she could have filled a whole episode.
Dorothy Greene-Pepper from Richmond, Virginia.
From Richmond, Virginia, she reminds us.
Yeah. The author of, what is it called? Poems?
Hate Poems for Ex-Lovers.
Hate Poems for Ex-Lovers. And that's right, it's February because they're talking about Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And she's wearing a hat with a heart on the hat.
Yeah, definitely.
And Tom says, "I know you have a heart on." And she runs with that in a...
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are you saying,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Excellent podcast quality enunciation there.
Yes.
By you. Not so much by him. He was a little bit more casual the way he said it. And
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's a saucy lass.
Yeah. She is.
But Tom seems delighted by her.
He does.
I think
He
he
calls her
genuinely enjoys it.
he says she's his friend.
I mean, she's going making... Yeah, I don't know if she had been on the show before, but it
Yeah.
seemed like it wasn't the first time they talked, and
Right.
I don't mean that in a euphemistic way. But she's trying to get her stuff in, basically, and
Yeah.
Tom's trying to, like, get a word in every now and then.
Right.
And she's kind of giving him stuff, and he's enjoying it. I mean, he's laughing and seems like genuinely delighted to have this conversation.
She's definitely, good for his ego, too.
She's
talking about how in Richmond they just love him.
Yeah.
They think he's so handsome. And
Wow.
that cleft in his chin.
Oh,
she
yeah.
can't even look at him.
Yeah, doesn't want him to look at her with that cleft in his chin.
Right. And there's something she says that makes him laugh, like so much. Like he's
Oh yeah,
he
yeah.
does. He's like, I can't stop laughing.
Yeah, was it about the where she makes the little? She says if it's. He says he's got like a little question, like a tiny question
Yes,
asked her, and she says, "Well, that's small. Why ask it?"
Right, and he's doing that like the fish, like a fishing story hand gesture.
Yeah, yeah. And then he expands his hands
Yes.
out. Well, how about if it's? And he does it, and he's like doing that laugh of his the whole time as he's expanding. Well, how about this or something? Right. Making his hands grow farther apart. And what a segment this was. I mean, they sort of get around to talking about the book, I guess.
Kind of. And she's there to read some Valentines that she's written too.
Yeah.
And he asks like some serious question about like why is it people who love each other can't get along.
Yeah.
I don't think she had a good answer, but
no, it was kind of a weird. It seemed like she was trying to fit like one of her like some saying of hers into the answer rather than give a genuine thing. But she seemed like she was one of a kind. I couldn't find much more on her when I was trying to do research. But
saw pictures of her book.
Yeah, and I saw there's a vintage LA Times article, profile of her, which is actually pretty interesting, which we'll put in the show notes link to. But cool. She apparently was a self-styled psychic as well. Mm. And I think an LA Times reporter, kind of went for like a little bit of a reading or some kind of impression whether. And
she did mention that.
Yeah,
so, she reads hands.
Yeah. And he I think said something like next time, we can.
What is my hands?
Yeah. Yeah, the two of them could have gone on a lot line. And he has to kind of cut her off. She's getting all this stuff in, but she does get to read like one of her some 2-line poem or something at the end of the segment. and because he says, "I've got 10 seconds, and we got to get out of here," or something. I'm like, oh, and she's a little disappointed. I think.
Yeah.
She clearly she could have gone on and on. I think.
Yeah. Do you think she and Iggy and Ricky and Jerome all had a big...
Yeah, the green room must have been great backstage.
Ricky probably had to go home to go to sleep.
What a shame.
I don't know if that show was live, but
I think
it's probably live to tape.
I don't know if he needed to be around
Yeah.
Dorothy Greene-Pepper.
No.
That might not.
Maybe that's what happened to Jerome. He met her.
He met her. And he left economics.
Yeah, he got his silver.
Yeah.
Moved in with her in Richmond.
Oh, yeah.
And still died of silver asphyxiation.
Yeah. Whatever. It still ended tragically, but oh, what a time he had in his last years. With Dorothy Greene-Pepper. She was actually stranger than Iggy Pop.
Yes.
Iggy Pop seems like, that guy's pretty well adjusted. He's got some interesting things to say. Dorothy Greene-Pepper comes out. I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah. And so she had the hat on and almost like what would you call it? Like a hat, like a small hat, like almost like a widow would wear. Or
yeah.
Not a...
I'm not sure what the word is for
maybe it's a pillbox hat, but then it had this heart thing.
Sort of like a variation of a pillbox, with like a...
Yeah, but then her head was, it was like she was wearing like a wetsuit. Not made out of like rubber, but her entire head was, except for her face, was covered.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had heart-shaped glasses, and it was just, and seemed a little bit older.
Yeah. An eccentric, we might say.
For sure, but she did seminars and things, and I guess made a living being her.
Yeah, and good for her. She must have enjoyed life.
Yeah, seemed like it.
I get. Yeah,
She might have had a few color teenies before.
Yeah.
The broadcast.
A nice. Hey, you can have many people in Richmond, Virginia, were fond of their color teenies. I think.
Yeah, that's where it was invented.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, I did not know that. But
yeah. During the Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going a bad place.
During the Civil War. That's interesting.
It's Richmond. I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sit out on the porch.
Yeah.
Firing up their color teenies.
Yeah. Forget about those folks down in Savannah.
Right.
They live life too fast down in Savannah.
Yeah.
But in Richmond, we're going to relax and have a colored teenie.
That's right.
And savor it for an hour or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dorothy might have savored a few of those backstage, but she's good. It's 41 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe something was missing, but...
Yeah, it didn't seem like it. Did it? Unless...
No.
I don't think they cut out... I don't think they seem to cut out a monologue, and there's no mention of Rona Barrett.
No, she was in the credits.
It's either this is complete or they did an excellent job of editing it, because I wouldn't... Unless you saw it originally, you wouldn't think anything was cut out.
No. But so she, I know Johnny Carson would have on some kind of guests like that sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the potato chip lady and
right.
things. But she definitely seemed like the kind of person that would have been a regular presence on Letterman.
Yeah.
Or the early years of Letterman.
Well, that's interesting now, because she seems like, I don't know if she could... Snyder seemed to be a good match for, would she be ready for 11:30? Probably not.
Probably not.
Because I don't think, Johnny would either be bemused by her, or he might be frustrated. I don't know if he would... the fact that Snyder had troubles getting a word in sometimes.
Yeah.
And Snyder rolled with it, but I don't know if that would work at 11:30.
And I think Letterman, certainly in that early period, would have been bemused, but not, engaged in the way.
Right.
Snyder was, I think, genuinely appreciated her.
Yeah, I think Letterman would be, sort of mocking it.
Yeah, he would have been looking at the audience a lot.
Yeah, you're right. That's
or Paul or something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I guess Dorothy would be on. She wouldn't be on 11:30. She'd be on at 12:20 something on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
But again, it's the sort of you've got your quote unquote reality TV stars now, but this is another interesting thing. It's the kind of person you would have, this eccentric personality that would just go on these late night shows. What the heck, have somebody as the fourth guest and just let them let them run with it for like 5 or 6 minutes.
And that's something like the Tonight Show kind of lost a lot of that when they went to 60 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Like, or, stopped having authors and...
Right. Became less interesting people and more celebrities.
Yeah.
Who you hope are interesting people, but not necessarily.
Right. Just a weird mix of stuff to have in one show. Like any one of those things would be a little bit odd.
Yeah.
In this show, in a talk show, but to have a precocious kid actor, a famous punk musician,
yeah,
a boring crackpot economist,
crackpot,
and an eccentric, saucy Southern woman.
Yeah, that's all conducted by the great Tom Snyder.
Right. Yeah, that's he's the glue.
Yeah, and so Iggy and his band come back out and they do like TVI, and it, like you said, it goes over the credits and it gets cut off basically. And
right.
Probably because Dorothy Greene-Pepper went over in her segment.
Yeah.
So that might be a little disappointment to the Iggy fans out there, but
yeah. Except for the ones in the audience.
Yeah, they got the whole show.
They've got that memory forever.
And then, yeah,
I was there when Iggy was on Tom Snyder.
Yeah, and the night he tore the roof off of Tom Snyder.
Yeah.
And then Jerome Smith brought it back down.
Maybe that's smart programming. Like,
yeah.
you get this, adrenaline rush. You need something to kind of calm you down. Yeah. Before the storm of Dorothy Greene-Pepper.
It was by design. Tom Snyder knew exactly what he was doing. He probably booked that whole show himself.
Or at least, give me a boring guy.
Yeah.
I need something.
I need a little filler in here.
Right. Wait, he's saying, what about the... Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good old Tom. So, I don't know. I mean, should we... I guess we could mention some of the other guests on the set. That there's a famous appearance of the Plasmatics.
Right. Do they cut a car in half or something?
Yeah, there's the
chainsaw
car, and Wendy O. Williams is all over the place. And,
right. The Jam.
Yeah, the Jam. Elvis Costello.
Yeah.
Joan Jett.
Yeah. New Wave. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and the kind of guests. Yeah, I guess that weren't. I don't remember Iggy Pop making an appearance on the Tonight Show in this era. So.
Did you make it one on any era?
Credit to
maybe in the Fallon era
show for putting them on.
Yeah, that's a pretty good set.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The time capsule aspects, the conversational aspects. It's the whole show is the kind of show you're just not going to see on network TV anymore.
Yeah,
for shame. I don't know what Carson Daly's doing.
I don't know what he's doing. I know he has a lot of music on now.
Yeah,
like I think they'll just film some band when they're playing a club and, just show it. Like he doesn't have a set or anything.
Yeah.
Which seems kind of cool.
Yeah.
That he's doing. I mean, he's doing something different with it. And
right.
I know he does other things for NBC, right? Like Olympics and Today Show stuff probably.
Yeah, and I definitely think, the one thing about this episode, it's a lot of singular personalities. Tom Snyder was unique, and Iggy Pop is unique. Dorothy Greene-Pepper is unique, and like you said, it's just an interesting blend of these personalities coming together. But Tom Snyder was one of a kind, man.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss him watching this. I kind of wish...
I wish he was around and had a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was doing stuff on his he had like a website for a while.
Yeah.
He was doing that. Yeah, that's an excellent thought. He died, I guess, in his mid-70s. I think he had leukemia.
Yeah.
Not too long after, I guess he was...
Like 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. So it was a little bit later than...
I think it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And
yeah.
I think, leukemia is a tough thing. I mean, it wasn't too long before... but it's too bad. It's we joke about it, but you'd think it would have been like lung cancer or something like that. But leukemia hit him, and he was a great TV personality. And yeah, today, with him doing a podcast, I could totally picture that. I mean, you'd sort of miss the visual of him.
But he did a lot of radio.
Yeah.
Like in between his TV periods.
That's true.
He did radio. And I think liked it. Like I think he had an LA TV show or something, and then that became like a 3-hour radio show.
Yeah. I mean, you got to develop some skills to hold an audience for 3 hours overnight. Or whatever it was. So.
Yeah, I do like the visual. I mean, just because he's also an interesting looking guy.
Yeah. And doing that wide grin and like playing to his cameraman, his people and stuff.
Right, yeah.
I always enjoyed that. And,
yeah.
And I I think what I'd like to do is go in and see if I could find more, not just necessarily the interviews, but just the monologues. I'd like to see a bunch of his monologues put together and just kind of recapture that sort of weird feeling. Because let's face it, even when you're in college, I mean, it's still pretty late, 12:30 at night.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a weird area anyway, and there's always that sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to say like dreamlike quality, but it's just an odd time. You don't have the same mentality you do like watching something at 7:30 or something, which CNBC show was, I don't think it was a 12:30 show. They probably reran it a bunch of times, but.
And now that I think about it, like Letterman in the later years kind of took on some of what he would do the same, like his desk pieces would be him just kind of sitting around talking about some, whatever thing at the hardware store or whatever, which seems very Tom Snyder now that I think about it. Like, because a lot of his like monologues would just be about like weird little incidents that happened. Or
And as we talk about this now, we know David Letterman's coming back with a project, and I wouldn't be surprised if it sounds like it's going to be very personalized, and it's him just talking to people, and it might be the kind of thing we're talking about, with just more intimate, without a band and without need to play to a studio audience, that it just be David Letterman talking to interesting people and having these kind of like conversations about stuff that amuses him and interests him, and we'll see. Maybe we'll see some. Be reminded of that Tom Snyder influence.
He's done a couple things like that. Like he did a thing with, I think it was like, I don't know if it was the Paley Center or 92nd Street Y or something, but he, where he talked to Seinfeld for an hour. And that, I don't think that was maybe not too long after he retired, but it had that air. It was like, oh, yeah, I would like to see this. Mm-hmm. And then he was on Comedians in Cars too. I think it was around the same time, and just, and he was trying to understand that, and you could see that he was curious about what you're just doing this yourself, basically, and it's not expensive, and but was also a very engaging conversationalist, which I think it seems like it took him on TV a long time to get to that place.
Yeah,
but
I suspect for many people, like, the appeal of this set was the music.
Yeah.
For me, it's Tom Snyder.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the musicians.
Right.
Like I said, I wasn't a big Iggy Pop guy. I mean, the Stooges were, like we said, a seminal band, but they had, 2-3 studio albums at
something
most.
Like that, yeah.
They kind of had a really short reign. Very influential, though, but...
Yeah. And I wasn't even aware of Iggy Pop until he had, that sort of comeback.
Like the MTV era.
That song with Kate Pearson. And
yeah.
Stuff. Who is this weird old shirtless guy?
How did that song go? Could you sing it for us to remind me?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just remember him. It was a pretty good song, I think, but it wasn't, it was like an acoustic kind of thing.
Yeah, and like the Lust for Life, the Train Spotting.
Yeah.
Seemed that kind of brought him back. So he's like kind of a personality now.
Yeah.
He's still making music and everything, but this is kind of a reminder, like, hey, this is not too long after. I guess you could, I don't know, arguably his prime Iggy, and it shows him as like a musical performer. And so, yeah, it's good that they even released something this format with musical performances. So I think it was Shout Factory, right, to put this out.
Yeah.
Good on them for doing this sort of unique talk show with, vintage music performances. To me, it's irresistible. I kind of want to watch the rest of the set, actually.
Yeah, I did too.
It's good stuff.
The Elvis Costello I want to watch just because I like his music.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like the Jam. I've seen the Plasmatics one.
Yeah, I don't think the Plasmatics are necessarily the same level of musicianship as Elvis Costello and the Attractions and the Jam. And Iggy Pop and his band. No.
They're sort of like a performance art thing more.
Yes, they're more so. And I think Tom Snyder sort of gets at that, whether because I did watch that one. But
yeah, was there anyone else interesting on that? Do you remember?
I can't remember offhand. No, it was, and actually that one was like 31 minutes or something like that in the set. So again, I don't know what was.
Yeah, well, I know there's an option on there to watch the music only.
Yeah.
So
like maybe, all of them, you can just the music, but yeah, the whole running time was 31. There was like another civilian. There was somebody from like a church group that he asked, and he kind of joked like he was kind of asking.
Maybe it got cut off.
Yeah,
because of the craziness.
Yeah, I don't know what went on there, but.
Yeah.
But it's good, and if you've never seen Tom Snyder and you watch it and you think today, like, boy, this seemed kind of like an odd guy. Well, I think he was kind of an odd guy probably back then.
Yeah.
And he was odd in the 90s and distinctive, though. But he's one of a kind as a broadcaster. And yeah, I kind of miss him.
Me too.
This episode brought to you by Jerome Smith, reminding you to hoard your silver. This episode also brought to you by Tom Snyder's Hearty Laughter in a Can, new from Dinty Moore. This episode also brought to you by Dorothy Greene-Pepper's Hate Poems for Ex-Lovers. It's the perfect stocking stuffer, sugar, if you know what we mean. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
Can I just ask one little
Go ahead. Go ahead, I'll let you. Go ahead.
Tiny question. Why do so many
If
people...
it's that small, why ask it?
How about asking this one, okay?
Go ahead.
Now listen to me very carefully. I can't talk, I'm laughing so hard. Oh my God.